last night you made a tweet where you called Trump a coward for not taking
feckless coward,
a feckless coward for making a stance one way or the other. How you doing, Dylan?
I'm doing okay. I'm wrapping up filming today. Well, it's today my time because it's very early in the morning. This is gonna be my last day. Last day of filming out here with the deminers for a bit. I might redeploy. I've been out here for about a month, so I might redeploy in another month or two and get some more filming with deminers and Mykolaiv, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to go through all the footage and figure out if I have enough to make something out of it. But I want to interview more people. I don't feel like I interviewed enough deminers. I want hours and hours of more interview footage. So
I bet, man. Dude, the stuff you're doing out there is awesome. I'm happy for you to do that, man. I think that's good. You're bringing a perspective out there that isn't being covered. And that's a good thing, man.
There's not
keep up the good work.
There's not really any. Definitely in the Western speaking press, the English speaking press, coverage of demining efforts in Ukraine. People don't know how bad it is in this country, where they're going to be demining this country for the next 70 to 100 years for the amount of explosives, cluster munitions, Mon 50, Mon 100s, Mon 20s, Mon 200s, T62Ms, just all these different explosives that have been laid, just tripwires and homes and villages and the countryside, butterflies, PFMM 1s, that have been dropped all across the country. They're going to be doing work for so long, and they lose people every month. Deminers and the not in even military sappers, but like emergency services deminers, not only explosions from their work. We've had people in our area in the last 2 weeks get killed. People with the emergency service with CESU, but also sappers getting shelled by the Russian, not even sappers, emergency service workers getting shelled by the Russian army. 6 were killed earlier this week when they were shelled by the Russians. A war crime, obviously. They're emergency service workers, so it's gotten very little attention, and I want to bring a tiny bit of attention to it if I can.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff, dude. Yeah, mining is evil, period. I think most mines, although they're not made illegal completely by the Geneva Convention, I think that practice should be eliminated completely in warfare.
It's interesting because from my conversation with most of the deminers, I like a few of them were like somewhat positive about banning them or wanting to see them not in warfare, but all of them were very cynical about it. Like, mines are just too useful. The idea of like any
they're very
military
useful.
Not using them. I mean, they were extremely useful in the defense of Kiev. They've been very useful in fights for locations like Volodar, especially anti-tank mines. But the main problem people have is not anti-tank mines; it's anti-personnel mines. That's the main issue that people have. Anti-tank mines is a problem too. They have blown up some tractors, and that can still kill civilians. But it's the anti-personnel mines that kill the most animals, kills the most people. And we have yet to see either side not want to not use them. I mean, the Ukrainians signed a treaty in 1997 to not use it, but I think they never really thought they would be fighting a war like this again, and so they have the tool and they want to use it.
Well, the biggest problem with mines is after the war, they're all not getting cleared. When I lived in Okinawa, I can remember a couple stories in the 3 years I lived there of children running across old mines from World War II, and it killing these children. And I mean, it's just horrible because if they're not all policed up properly, bad things happen, and that's really the true horror of the mines. It's usually not during the war itself. I mean, yes, it's horrific, but what really is the problem is much long after the wars are done. They're not completely cleared up. I mean, they're still finding mines from World War I in areas of France.
Oh, they're still finding mines and bombs from World War I in Ukraine and World War II.
Yeah.
In fact, they were finding I think it was like 70,000 a year or some like crazy number of bombs from World War I and World War II still in Ukraine. And now that is being layered upon by a whole new wave of bombs and explosives due to this war. That's why they're going to be doing this for, I think the estimate was, if the war was to end 5 months ago, then they would be doing this work for 70 years. Obviously, it didn't end. We're probably looking at like roughly 80 to 100 years of demining work if conditions don't change. They're trying to get different developments in the field. Drones are heavily used by demining crews now. Drones are extremely useful. Using drones to kind of like automatically like map out and take pictures of like huge fields which are mined. I've personally seen how effective that can be in spotting where the mines are, which is like 90% of the work is spotting where the mine is, because most of the mining is just like going back and forth, trying to find where these mines are. I think that can probably shave off a lot of years. There's talk about ground penetrating radar, but I mean, I've heard people like advertise like, oh, we can do ground penetrating radar now. I've heard some very hopeful things from Ukrainian deminers, but that's a very untested technology, definitely when it comes to being put on drones. So I'm hoping there's more innovations in the field, not only to help in this war, but also in other conflicts, like doing more work in Cambodia and Libya and Syria and other locations that have a lot of unexplored ordinances.
Yeah, UXOs, man, are freaking scary, no doubt. So yeah, last night you made a tweet where you called Trump a coward for not taking a feckless coward for making a stance one way or the other, and I just basically said bad take, and that's what you're like. Oh, you want to come on the look, if he wants to be a moderator, he's basically acting as a judge. You know, he is someone who is supposed to be working towards the shared goal of peace or whatever. And it would be wrong and improper for him to come saying, yes, I want this to happen or that to happen, because ultimately it's going to be a decision between the two warring factions.
Well,
so when, Carter. So Jimmy Carter did more. Jimmy Carter did more outside of his presidency that was good than he did within his presidency. He did a lot of good things towards pursuance of peace. And when he went to make deals, he went there as more of an impartial moderator, and he was very successful. And I think that's what Trump is kind of referencing to, what he wants to do, what he plans to do. He wasn't very specific. I think we can both admit that. And I think his claim in the 24 hours is ridiculous. But him not being, oh, yes, I'm 100%, I want Ukraine to win, or I want Russia to win, or anything, that would just be stupid in the capacity in which he is trying to show that he wants to bring. And that's really why I took that as a bad take.
So there's two reasons why I think he's a feckless coward. The first reason I think he's a feckless coward is because he dodged a lot of the questions. And he was purposely dodging the questions. The moderator had to keep pushing in order to get the answers that we did get.
The moderator was a debate opponent and not a moderator.
But
won't you just go ahead and recognize that?
Well, it's hard for me, for example, if I'm being interviewed and I'm a politician on a major network, and I say, I was molested by Barack Obama on like major TV. Like as a news person, you're gonna have to be like, that's not true, Dylan. You don't have any evidence for that. Do you have anything to prove that? And then like as a reporter, you have to ask those follow-up questions. And so when he didn't answer some of the questions, I feel like it was worthwhile for her to do follow-ups. But yeah, it got really spicy. There was definitely a back and forth. And it's very easy for it to get very combative when you're talking to Trump, because if you correct Trump will never accept a correction. Ever. No matter how wrong he was. But can I get to let me get to my point. One example where I think he was a feckless coward was like avoiding the war criminal question. Definitely when this isn't something that he's not even consistent on. A month into the war, he said Putin was guilty of genocide. He said the Russians were committing genocide in Ukraine a month into the war, which is a more powerful statement than even Biden had delivered technically at that point, right? And now, a year later, he can't even say that Putin's a war criminal after the ICC has issued a warrant for his arrest off of the kidnapping of Ukrainian children, which, if you were trying to make the case for genocide, which Trump made a month into the war, I mean, that is probably as on the nose as you could possibly be, as there's a lot of reports of these children being indoctrinated within Ukrainian, through Russian filtration camps before being deported to Russia illegally under international law. So that was something that really, really angered me, because before he gave his opinion about them being a war criminal, when there was a lot of heat, the most support for Ukraine right after the invasion, but now that it's died down some, and support for Ukraine's still high, but it's not as high as it was at the start. Now that it's died down, he's pulling back that rhetoric, and it feels like he's moving with the wind.
Well, so the reason why he shouldn't have said that Putin is a war criminal at this point is because of the role that he is advocating to take. It is just one of those things that if you want to enter negotiations between two opposing factions and you want to be the moderator, you cannot show bias towards either of the sides. And that seems to be what he is doing. He is tempering his message so he can facilitate that role at a later date if he was to win the election, which
so he's not being honest, or he's not being truthful.
He's a politician.
He's not going to answer the question.
No politician is honest. Let's be honest. Let's be real about it.
That's not a good.
Okay, every politician is a liar.
That's not a good.
That is the answer.
Okay, if that is the answer,
how is that not the answer?
Anytime you critique Joe or Hillary Clinton, I can just say politicians lied is what it is. And you're like, okay then, and then we just move on. Like I don't have to accept responsibility for that when like a politician like lies or moves with the wind. Because before he was calling him a genocidal maniac. He was saying it was genocide. It was back, and now all of a sudden. So he's committing genocide, but it isn't a war crime? Like, how does this like balance out? Because he's already said he's committing genocide. So it's not like he's at risk of sounding impartial. He sounded not impartial when he said he was committing genocide.
You're right. But he could claim that he has changed his mind, because has your mind ever been changed before, Dylan? It does happen.
That can't work. So you're going to say that he should reverse the position, saying, actually, there is no genocide. There is no war crimes, and so I'm not
advocating for him to do that at all.
But he would have to do that to roll his opinion back.
But that may be what he does. I honestly, a lot of things that Trump has done recently, I don't fully support. But with Trump saying that he wants to moderate between the two factions, him trying to show impartiality is a smart move. That does not make him a coward. In fact, that's the bravest thing you can do right now in your hyper-polarized political world that we live in, is saying, you know what, bad things can be happening on both sides, and let's just try to resolve towards peace.
I don't think it's brave to be honest about what was going on at the start of the war, but then later switch your opinion when the heat died down. That's what it feels like. The heat.
I don't know if he did it because of the political. I don't know if he's doing that because of polling sway or whatnot. I don't know.
It feels like at the start of the war, people were worried because Trump was releasing statements like, Putin's a smart guy, and people's like, Trump, why are you saying that? He just invaded Ukraine. He just did all this stuff, and he was like, look, it's genocide. To try to, hey, look, I'm not the Putin guy. I said he committed genocide. But now it's a few years late. It's a year later. The heat's died down. It's not as controversial anymore to say you don't support Ukraine with aid, or you don't want to be with them. And so now he's switched. He's moving with the wind.
So Trump was pitching a temper tantrum because he has lost the presidency. He was claiming that there is no way that Ukraine would have been invaded had he still been in office. So his rhetoric has changed because there is no way that he is getting back in the office, with the exception of being elected there now. He was advocating for different things at that time. Now he is changing his stance because now he's back in that political campaign mode. So should he
reverse the statement then? Because that's the only way the statement would be consistent.
If someone brings it up to him, I would like to see how he would actually react to that. Maybe journalists should actually pose that question to him, because bring him with his own quote and say, well, the other night you refused to answer this question. You have this previous statement. Maybe journalists should do their fucking job and do some research and actually press the question.
Okay, so are you in favor of like the debate style from the CNN moderator or not? Or like with
no,
the pressure?
That was a town hall that was there for the people. It should have been about the people instead of someone who is vying for Don Lemon's job or Chris Cuomo's old position, is trying to score points. It should have been done at a actual moderator's stance, doing some fact checking in real time. But she was playing semantic fucking games, especially like with the wall thing. oh, you didn't build anything but 58 new miles of wall, and completely disregarding the hundreds of miles of replacement wall that was put up. She was playing a semantic game. She was debate broing him for no fucking reason.
I don't think it was for no reason. I think that a lot of the things Trump say are not true, and so it feels like there's a journalistic responsibility to be like, "Hey, what you said isn't true."
What she was doing was not journalism. In fact, what she was doing last night was debate broing. She was trying to gain points to hopefully get a primetime spot, and she isn't going to get it. Okay. Last night her poll numbers for running for president did not go up.
Why were you so unwilling to like accept that? Oh, well, Trump did that to like flow with the wind, because public opinion has somewhat changed, and so he's kind of flipping with public opinion, whatever benefits him most. You can't assume that about Trump. You can't assume his intent there because you don't know his intent, but you are willing to assume her intent for why she was doing it, not because she genuinely cared about pressuring a politician and holding them to account, but because she's greedy for her job.
Well, that's the only thing that makes sense to me, and I could be wrong. I can admit that. But when she is there as a moderator, she did not do the job of a moderator. When you ran the hippy dippy, even though you do have your own biases, you did your best to appear unbiased to the audience. Okay, you were trying to do your job as a moderator properly.
Well, yeah, but there's different types of. I think that she definitely. It wasn't just like a normal moderation.
She wasn't. She wasn't doing a professional job. But also, she was not doing a professional job. And
there's a difference between me bringing somebody on just to hear their opinions and somebody running for public office and trying to hold politicians to account. For example,
last night she was running for office and did not go up in the polls.
Well, as far as I know, she isn't running for office. But
I know, but that's what it sounded like. It sounded like she was running for office.
But if somebody's running for public office and says something untrue on stage, and you're a journalist there, and you know they said something untrue on stage, do you not have a responsibility to comment on that? Be like, data shows that what you just said is completely not true.
So there is one thing between correcting him and saying, no, this is actually fact check false, and then playing little bitchy semantic games like she was doing last night.
A lot of it was not semantic games. Definitely when it comes to like the rigging of the election.
You know what? All she had to say is, well, that's your opinion. That doesn't pan out that way. She even said that Trump lost X amount of 60 plus court cases, and that's actually wrong. 58 of them were just denied on standing, had nothing to do with the actual weight of the case or anything like that.
They were rejected. A lot of them were rejected because there was no case to be held.
They were rejected based on standing. They didn't even hear the arguments.
There was no arguments.
That is a semantic game. That is not a loss.
I don't know. That is not a loss. We're getting off track. But that's what I'm talking about. It's the semantic games that she was playing, and she was more of a debate opponent than she was a moderator. She could have said, "Look, you lost these what 6 cases or whatever it was, that were actually heard. The rest of them were turned down based on standing." She could have given actual context instead of playing semantic. Well, you lost 60 plus deals. You actually only built 58 miles of new wall. Disregard the hundreds of miles of wall that was replaced. She was playing stupid semantic games. She was running for president without being an actual candidate, and her poll numbers did not go up. When Trump was running for office, are you telling me that when he said build the wall, he did not mean he actually wanted to build a wall from one side of the U.S.-Mexico?
He actually stated that he wanted to do that. Yes. He was not able to do that because the president does not have the power to do that on their own.
So why is it bad for her to bring that up, that he made a promise that he couldn't even ever deliver?
Because it's not, all she has to do is give the proper context. She could say, look, you stated this is what actually happened. That would have been the journalistic thing to do. Instead, she was campaigning. The only reason why the DNC, the only reason why CNN hosted that is because they were trying to get sound bites for the DNC. That's the way it looked like last night. Had she went there as a professional, and acted as a professional moderator, she could have accurately fact checked them without doing the semantic games, and she would have come out looking brilliant.
Look,
but instead she looked like a failed opponent.
I don't know the intention of behind her. I do feel like Trump gave the sound bites that could definitely be used by Democrats. In fact, they were. Joe Biden immediately started using the things he said and started and attack ads on Twitter. I saw the videos he was posting about, like, he was like the things he was saying about the like January 6th protesters next to the footage of all the violence, like immediately afterwards. Let's get back to the Ukraine topic. I also, the 24-hour thing, that really gets under my skin.
It's ridiculous.
Because this goes against what Trump himself has said is like his standard on how he wants to do diplomacy. When people would ask him what kind of deals does he want to do with the Taliban, or what kind of deals he wants to do here, or what types of things he wants to do internationally, what strategies he wants to use, he would say, I'm not telling you my strategies. I'm not going to give the enemies or the opponents, I'm not going to tell them in advance. And when you say 24 hours, all that said, the message that sends to Putin is that if Trump gets elected and he can just wait a day or two, maybe a week, then all he has to do is wait it out, and he's going to get everything he wants. He's going to get Crimea, he's going to get Kherson, he's going to get Zaporozhye, he's going to get everything he wants. Donetsk, Luhansk, everything. And we already know from previous statements Trump has made on Sean Hannity's program that he's perfectly willing to give Ukrainian territory to the Russians, not only in the scenario right now where the war is happening. He said that this war wouldn't be happening. He keeps making this claim that this war wouldn't be happening with him. One of his proposals that would have been to stop the war, and he revealed this on Sean Hannity's program, would be giving more territory to the Russians.
Well, so
everything just seems like it just feels like concession bait. It feels like a perfect environment to abandon Ukraine and let the Russians dominate it.
So we had a conversation about this when the war kicked off, and I basically stated that the only thing that makes sense is that they're trying to build a logistical land bridge between Russia and Crimea. Okay, as it stands right now, even though Ukraine is getting some of the land back that was initially taken, that has already been accomplished. Now, some people will say that the attack on Kiev was a feint. Some people will say, that was a failed invasion deal.
Did we talk about that last time?
Yeah, we talked about it, and I think it was possibly a feint. There's a lot of different things that are being said about that. I think for all intents and purposes, Russia has achieved what they wanted. And yes, Trump doesn't care if Ukraine cedes that land because it's not America's stand. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about Russia. All he wants is America not involved. Yes, no, he doesn't care about who gets what. And I think that's reasonable. That's a reasonable stance. You don't have to be pro Russia or pro Ukraine. You could just be anti-US involvement. And I think that's what ultimately Trump's stance at this moment is.
So
his statement last night that he just said he wants the killings to end, I think that was actually a good statement. Now, do I agree with everything he said about it last night? Hell no. But I think ultimately it was a good statement. It was basically him saying in his own way that America doesn't belong in this war. We want it ended. We don't, we want less people to die. We want to sue for peace, whatever that looks like. The quickest way to get peace is the best way by the American point of view. I know you don't share that point of view, Dylan, and that's completely fine. But coming from a foreign policy stance, if you want to moderate, you don't want the judge to be biased against you. Period. Okay, so, you want an unbiased, and that's what he's trying to appear as.
So when it comes to the Russians' goals, the Russians' original goal was to destroy the government in Ukraine, was to replace it with probably either Yanukovych or some other stooge that would work for them and serve Russian interests.
Did they come out and say that?
Yeah, they were pretty open about that. That was part of the denazification. Okay. They released like a 5-point plan when everything started to fall apart. They were marching on Kiev for this region. This is part of the reason why the American government offered Zelensky a ride out of the country. It was because they knew that the Russians were making a beeline for Kiev. It's part of the reason why they did like the 40-mile convoy is they would only do something like that as if they were really trying to take the capital, or they just wanted to, like, I don't know, get all their guys killed in ambushes and Bayraktar strikes and everything else.
40-mile convoy is stupid. It's
very stupid. The VDV landings at Hostomel seem to indicate that as well. And
I even told you the way they did that was even wrong. So
yeah, so I just originally that was the goal, and that doesn't seem to have succeeded. And so later they released their 5 points, and their 5 points was the denazification of Ukraine, which I think, since they're using neo-Nazi militias to invade Ukraine, like Rusich, it's hard for me to really take that very seriously. I guess you can maybe interpret that as a change of government as well, but that seems to be a propaganda point. But the rest of them, when it comes to the demilitarization of Ukraine, they haven't succeeded in that. They failed. Ukraine's probably more militarized than ever. When it comes to the capturing of the rest of the Donbass, they failed when it comes to that. When it comes to keeping Ukraine neutral, they failed when it comes to that. If anything, they're more pro-NATO as ever. The majority of Ukrainians, for the first time ever, support NATO membership. When it comes to the expansion of NATO, they failed. Not only did they fail, they failed spectacularly. NATO's border with Russia has doubled by Finland joining, and Sweden most likely will be joining sometime in the future. It feels like their own stated war goals, they failed to achieve them on every level. The one thing they have been able to garner from this war is the land bridge connecting Crimea to the rest of this territory. For how long? Who knows, depending on the Ukrainian counteroffensive, which many people speculate could be in the Zaporozhye Oblast. That's where most analysts are saying it's going to be, which would be probably directed towards taking Metropole and trying to, destroy that land bridge. I don't think that when Trump is saying these, making these proposals and making these statements, and in advertising themselves as an impartial moderator, that this is giving Ukraine any more leverage. I think it's removing leverage. When he's asked, do you want to send any more aid? Would you stop the aid? And he doesn't answer the question and dodges it. It's interpreted as he doesn't want to send any more aid. When he says he wants to negotiate it closed in 24 hours, it removes even more leverage from the Ukrainians in one of these scenarios. It's removing all of the leverage by taking us out of the scenario, making us the quote unquote impartial moderator. It puts Ukraine in a much, much, much weaker position, and it's going to be much easier for the Russians to just say, we're going to wait it out. And if you look at Russian actions, what they're doing on the ground when it comes to the extrajudicial killings, the arresting of civic society leaders, the imposition of Russian passports on people, or you will be deported if you do not accept a Russian passport, all these activities and all of these oblasts seem to mean permanent occupation. That seems to be their goal. So my question is, what the fuck is there to negotiate if the Russians aren't going to give up any of the land they're occupying? The only option seems to be to push them back until either a point where the Russians break and they want to concede that territory that they've taken, or they are physically forced out of Ukraine, considering the type of activities they're engaged in. And we can't achieve that if Trump is acting as an impartial moderator, which the majority of Americans don't even want.
Okay, so what do you think are acceptable terms for Ukraine?
Like personally?
Yeah.
Russians leave.
So does that include Crimea?
Yes.
Okay, so that's unacceptable.
Well, no, to Russia, right whether the Russians accept that. No.
That's not going to happen.
Russia's not going to accept that right now. We don't know whether that's going to happen or not. That could happen depending on how it plays out on the battlefield. Whether the Russians accept it in negotiations.
2014. You want pre-2014.
Yes, that should be our goal. Okay. That should be our starting point. So, absolutely.
Okay. So I'll tell you, Russia will not accept that. You know Russia wouldn't even accept that.
Currently, right now, I don't think they would. That's why we need to change the situation on the ground.
I don't think they would. I don't think they would accept that. Period. It's been part of the Russian. It's been part of Russia since 2014. I mean, before
so has Donetsk. So since it's parts of Donetsk and Luhansk.
Well, so if you wanted to say pre-invasion, 2021 invasion borders, 2022 invasion borders, they would probably be more amicable to accept that than they would pre-2014 invasion. it's just that is from the Russia perspective, that would just be ridiculous. They wouldn't accept that, and that they wouldn't accept that. So
right now, no.
So the reality of the situation is, if Europe said, if America and Europe said, you know what, we want this to end, Zelensky, you either show up to the deals or no more aid. We'll cut you the fuck off and we'll just let Russia roll over you, because that's what'll happen.
We don't know
if we
that.
cut off all aid. If they cut off all aid, the only reason why this war has gone on is been because of Western interference, Western aid. The people of Ukraine has stood up and they have fought, but without the equipment to fight, they can't fight. And that's what's keeping them alive right now. Western aid is helping them, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that. The fighting spirit of Ukraine has been strong. Good on them, man. I'm happy to see how well they have held on. But all at the same time, the reality of it is, if it wasn't for the deliverance of HIMARS, if it wasn't for the constant bombs and artillery shells and everything else that has been handed over to Ukraine so they can continue to fight, they already depleted their own stocks of ammunitions and stuff. They are now depending on imported munitions. They're now depending on imported equipment. They have, they say, oh, well, there's only 14 special operations operatives in Ukraine right now from the U.S. Those 14 happen to be Green Berets. You know what the mission of the Green Berets are?
Sometimes it's training, but we don't know exactly what they're engaged in.
But the majority of what they're doing is training people how to fight, teaching them how to do counterinsurgency.
We don't know what those people are engaged in, and we also know that we were told this very early in the war that we had deployed special operators to protect embassy staff. And so I don't know if they're being deployed to train people or if these are the guys that were deployed to protect embassy staff. We don't know really, but it could be either or. Who knows?
We don't know fully, but when they say special operations, and in a situation like this, it's more than likely going to be Green Berets. If they are for embassy security, it's usually the Marines that do that, and not special operators. It'll be standard trained Marines, not your Raiders or your Force Recon. The Green Berets are what makes the most sense, to be honest. And they have also announced that they are tracking some of the shipments that are coming in of the munitions and showing where they go. That way the American people know that the Ukrainian fighting men and women are actually getting the materials that are being sent to them with the intended purpose of what they're being sent for. So they could be doing that as well. But I'm almost certain that yes, we have soldiers training Ukrainian fighting people to make sure that they are getting even if we're not training them in Ukraine,
we already know we're training them in the States, and we already know that they're being trained in the United Kingdom.
Yeah. So, but the war probably would not be going as well as it is if it wasn't for Western support that they've been currently receiving. So yes, it would be quite easily said that if someone came and said, you're going to go to the peace tables and we're going to work something out, and Zelensky says, I don't want to do that, and they say, cool, nice knowing you, good luck, best of luck, that would severely weaken their stance. That would severely weaken Ukraine's stance. Would you agree there?
Would America no longer back in Ukraine weaken Ukraine's stance? Yes.
Okay. And if the group that happens to be paying the vast majority of all military aid and equipment to Ukraine pulls the fuck out, and they look over at their European cousins and say, hey, by the way, we've paid all this money, get on our level, or we're done with you, they're probably going to go, yes, Zelensky, you need to go to the table as well. Okay. It's because
it depends on who it's going to be. Like, the Poles are going to have a much different perspective than Emmanuel Macron.
Yes. But I will tell you, the Poles are more apt to defend themselves than the French are. And France has one of the biggest militaries in the world, but they're also surrender monkeys who raise a flag every time anyone looks at them funny.
I mean, Is that like a serious statement or just a meme? I assume it's just a meme. Yeah.
No, well, it's a little bit of both, because that's what the U.S. military views the French fighting forces as. The only ones that we actually tend to respect are the Foreign Legion, and that's because there's no Frenchmen in it.
The French, I mean, I as much as I like to bully the French, like that's mostly just a meme derived from World War II. The French, I mean, World War I would be an example of where the French were literally like killing their own mutineers rather than surrendering to the Germans. The Napoleonic Wars would be another example of the French.
Napoleonic Wars don't even count because it's not modern warfare. Look at how quickly they ran away in Vietnam.
That's silly.
I'm talking about in modern warfare, in industrialized warfare.
What about Algeria?
Algeria? Yeah, they did okay, but a lot of that was done by the Foreign Legion.
Yeah, that's
the French Foreign Legion are fucking scary, dude. Those guys are awesome. They're great to work with. I've done a little bit of work with them.
I feel like we're
French
getting
military, not so.
Okay,
not taking that serious.
Okay, the French, but we're getting off track.
In all reality, okay, if America decided to pull out their aid and they said, "You got it, Europe," that's Germany, UK, France, Poland. Poland is more capable of defending themselves than the Germans. The Germans are another 10 years away until they are even considered an effective fighting force capable of defending themselves. A report came out last year stating that. So now they're 9 years away of being able to actually handle their own defenses, because they rely solely on NATO, which is mostly funded by the UK and America. America being the top funder, UK being the second.
Okay.
When you look at France could probably defend themselves pretty well.
I get it. I get the
Europe as a whole
point.
depends on American defense for their sovereignty, because they sure as fuck won't do it themselves, because they're too busy paying for all these other programs for their citizens, which is great for their citizens, but it's bad for the American people. Trump's biggest complaint was that most NATO countries were not paying their quote unquote fair share. He actually worked on that, and many of the nations were working on paying their back money. He come with the same argument last night, and he said 170 billion. I think it's 167 billion total in aid that America has sent to Ukraine since the start of the war.
No, but yeah, whatever.
I don't know what the exact number is, but
we've sent about 38 billion in military aid, roughly.
No,
but when it comes to like other types of aid, no, it isn't. But when it comes to other types of aid, I think it might get closer to 100 billion. But a lot of the ways people are counting aid is very, very. I'm trying to think of another word than autismo. Like, for example, they're counting supplements. They're counting the replacements we then purchase for our own military that we were going to purchase anyway. Definitely when it comes to the Vietnam era equipment that we're handing over to Ukrainians, we're counting that as aid, even though we're not even handing that over to the Ukrainians. We're counting aid that we haven't even given the Ukrainians yet, even though we announced we were going to give it to them 6 months ago. We're counting a lot of the aid that we're giving them, even though it's 60, 70-year-old equipment, we're counting it as the price it was when we originally manufactured it, not as the price it is now, even though the value of that equipment has gone down drastically due to the fact that it's no longer modern, up-to-date technological equipment that we would use for our own forces. A lot of the ways people count this aid is very dishonest.
Well, so so I know, like with the Bradleys, they're sending Desert Storm era, which is, those are about 30-year-old weapons platforms, but they are being updated with new night vision and some new thermal stuff before it's being sent over there. They're bringing them up to post Desert Storm era, early 2000s technology, not armor, because the Bradley paper thin. But they were talking about bringing what was it? Two companies of Bradleys, not Bradleys, of Abrams that they were talking about sending, and that's
31.
Supposed to be coming. 31 tanks.
31
are so that's like two companies worth. That's of tanks, and that will that's supposed to be coming. I believe August is the projected first.
It's a very rough estimate. It's gonna take a lot of time to train them. I don't know how exactly when, but they don't have it yet.
Yeah, I believe the last projection I saw was August. And I mean, look, it is cool that America is helping, I guess. I mean, I've basically talked about how I would rather us stay out of it. It's not our problem. But look, if our NATO allies are bothered by this, or okay, we should help out our NATO allies. I have no problem with that. We've promised all this aid, and look, my only argument with you was that the stance that he took on Ukraine, your take on his stance on Ukraine was bad simply because of what he was suggesting his role would be.
Well, his role would be terrible. His role would lead to the summary executions of possibly not only thousands of people, but it would also undermine what is being created, which is a very strong alliance with the Ukrainian people, which would benefit the United States in the long run, as the transatlantic alliance has been something that has not only built American security, but also American prosperity. And I think expanding that and continuing to invest in that project is a fantastic investment for the United States. And that's outside of the moral reasons of fighting against a war of cultural and national annihilation, as the Russians have said right at the outset, that they don't really even believe Ukraine has a right to exist as a state.
Well, from the Russian perspective, I can almost understand that, because they believe Ukraine is in fact Russian, because the founding of the Rus Empire was in Kiev.
Well, that was because of a scholarly issue. I don't want to get to it. I don't want to get into the.
But if they believe that, then they believe there is no Ukrainian identity.
The Germans believe they were a master race of people. That the national narratives can be, the Turks believe Kurds were mountain Turks. They're not really Kurdish. Yeah. There's a lot of crazy narratives that nations believe that are unbelievably fascistic or racist or bigoted or imperialistic. They have a colonial mindset when it comes to Ukraine. Yeah.
I'm not legitimizing. I'm just saying I understand their point of view. I can understand their point of view. I don't have to agree with it. Okay. Just like the Ukrainians say, hey, we have a right to exist. Okay, well, you haven't until the fall of the Soviet Empire. You did not exist.
That's not true.
Really?
They had multiple states before. They had at the end of World War I, they had a state which was then invaded by the Soviet Union. Of course, the USSR even acknowledged to some extent that the Ukrainians existed, or they wouldn't have made the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, which included Crimea. Something, by the way, that Vladimir Putin said in 2008 was a settled issue, that there's no ethnic conflict in Ukraine. He said that in a 2008 interview after he invaded Georgia and everybody was scared of him. But since then, of course, he's changed his position because you move with the wind when it's politically convenient.
Well, it's also, I think a lot of that was based on a need for a warm water port.
They already have a warm water port. They don't need one in Crimea as well. They already have another one.
There was one with a deeper channel going to it. That's what they wanted. That's why
maybe they need another one with they need another one with good palm trees for good shading as well.
So
maybe a third one, fourth one, fifth one.
So part of the invasion, that the lands that have been taken over towards the Sea of Azov, one of the shipyards that are there is one of the few shipyards that can handle their Admiral Krasnikov or whatever their aircraft carrier. It's the only one that can handle that within the Russian sphere of influence. And Ukraine was actually repairing it in their shipyard for the Russians. And I think, honestly, he wanted to take that to not have to pay that bill. There's probably a lot of it. I don't have to make sense of it. I don't even have to agree with it. Yeah,
there's reasons why Russia did this. I don't think they're good reasons, but yes, I acknowledge that Russia did this for reasons. Yes.
So way I look at it is trying to figure out, okay, if we want peace, which I think you want peace in Ukraine.
I want peace and victory.
Okay, well,
because I don't, because here's the problem I have, especially with the Trumpian view of this, is I do not think if we were to get the Trumpian deal that we would have peace in Ukraine. Number one, Zelensky could never, ever, ever accept giving up Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, and Crimea.
Mhm.
If he was to do that, the Ukrainian people would consider him a feckless coward. And the Ukrainian people have a tradition of, oh, you didn't do what the people wanted, you're now gone. Goodbye. We saw that with Yanukovych, and I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't do the same thing again to Zelensky. From my personal conversation with Ukrainians, I'm told this time and time and time and time again, that he shouldn't get too comfortable because we're perfectly willing to do the same thing again. He's popular right now, but the reason he's popular is because he standed up for Ukrainian national sovereignty. So if he gets rid of that national sovereignty, then he's getting rid of the one reason why he is so overwhelmingly popular right now. So Zelensky, politically, in interpretation of his own people, even if America said they were going to pull out all of his support, there's just no way he could sign a deal that signs away all that territory. That's the first thing. So I don't think that us pulling out would get peace. I just think it would be easier for the Russians to commit cultural annihilation by us pulling out. Second thing, let's say that somehow they do negotiate a plan. All this is going to do is kick the can down the road to another generation of people 10 to 15 to 20 years from now. And instead of talking about the 2014 invasion and the 2022 invasion, it's going to be 2014, 2022, 2030, 2035. And we're just adding more and more layers to this conflict. So we're going to have the same issue down the road for another generation of Ukrainians, another generations of Europeans, and the United States once again. We should deal with the problem now.
I agree with you. I think that some acceptable terms should be found for both groups to where it doesn't continue. However, I don't know if that's so. With you saying that, then there's only a couple of legitimate outcomes to that mindset, Dylan. And one of them is outsiders are going to go outside and go mind their own business and allow whatever's going to happen. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the people are looking at here in America, we're looking at our infrastructure crumbling, and we're sending billions upon billions overseas, money that was not allocated, money that was not budgeted for. And the
Congress
way
voted on the Lend-Lease Act. Congress also votes on a lot of this aid, and a lot of the aid that the Congress doesn't vote on.
Lend-Lease Act of World War II, or did they do a new one?
It's like a new version, but it's the same principle.
Okay.
They this is the thing I don't like, because if people say, "Oh, this wasn't properly done," we all know. For number one, it was, but let's say that it wasn't. We all know that if there was a vote in Congress tomorrow on whether we should keep sending aid to Ukraine, it would overwhelmingly win.
So, if we had a vote, okay, but there's a lot of people. Well, we
had votes on the Lend-Lease Act, and for a lot of this aid, it has to be voted on in separate bills. Whether it wasn't appropriated in the official like budget that we do like every few years to budget the economy, that we're doing separate bills separate from that to give aid, and that's what we're going to have to do
every year. It's supposed to be budgeted every year, and so my argument would be that all the funding that has gone to Ukraine has been emergency funding, which was not previously budgeted for. This is money that has been basically printed out of the ether. We're basically borrowing against. My generation, we're not. We've only got another 20, 30 years of this world or so. But your generation, the generation following you, we're spending money that we haven't even earned yet. And this is America's problem altogether. Is I have no problem helping other countries, but we got to help ourselves first. And this is what Trump was kind of pushing towards, because Europe, this is a European problem, the Ukraine war. Europe is not paying their fair share.
It's not that simple.
No, it isn't that simple. But you know what? We could break that down to a soundbite. We can easily say Europe is not paying their fair share, and therefore this is not America's war to be a part of. This is a proxy war, as far as I see it.
I don't like that term. It's condescending.
I know you don't.
Very condescending.
But the way Americans see it, they don't care about the optics, how Ukrainians feel. What they care about is what Americans feel. And a lot of Americans are sitting there saying, this is a proxy war. This is no different than Afghanistan in the 80s. And hey, how did that work out?
That's not really smart. Well, actually, the Soviet Union went away. It collapsed. We won the Cold War.
The Soviet Union went away, and then 9/11 happened because the people we trained to fight the Soviets decided to fight us later. And there's actually a pattern that you can follow with America's helping.
So do you think so we're gonna have like Azov like bombing New York City? How's that gonna work?
I actually don't believe that's going to happen. But
so then why even bring up the comparison?
So you can make those arguments, though. Those arguments can go.
So you don't think it's going to happen, but you can cynically make the argument.
Oh yeah, you can make that argument.
So don't cynically make the argument if you don't think. The thing is, I try to argue in good faith. I do my best to not argue points that I don't actually believe.
I'm not arguing the point. I'm saying it can be argued. I'm saying people will put forward that argument. I've already seen it. I think it's a dumb argument, just like your take on Twitter was bad. That's all I'm saying. I could sit there and say, hey, I think this is a bad take. I think it's interesting how you basically are saying, well, you either get peace and complete Ukrainian victory or nothing else is acceptable. So I'll tell you what is acceptable. Whatever the United States people finally look around and they realize that their homeland is crumbling because the infrastructure is not being taken care of. And all this money is being sent to fight a war that has nothing to do with us. So we make the Europeans feel better. Europeans are not paying their fair share, not paying their fair share. Look, cut off Israel too. I don't care.
I don't know. Okay.
Okay, that's what you said. Well, Israel, who cares?
No, I didn't say. Wait, I didn't say it. When did I say Israel?
I thought that's what I heard.
No, I said that isn't true. I was disagreeing with you.
Okay,
I do think it's our business.
A lot of Americans.
We have treaties that we signed, agreements that we signed. We made okay. So to be clear, but an agreement. If we sign an agreement saying we will come assist somebody, the Budapest Memorandum. If they're okay,
a treaty and a memorandum.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over your interruption.
No. I want you. You're lying. You are being dishonest. You're being disingenuous.
I'm lying. I'm lying
because. There were not treaties. There were agreements that we will assist in.
Yeah, and we are assisting. We are assisting.
Yes, but that is not a treaty. A treaty has to be.
It's an agreement.
Actually,
we made an agreement saying that we were going to
Congress.
Okay, you're just okay. Yeah. You can hold on for that as long as you want. We had an agreement saying that we would assist them. We don't have any troops on the ground fighting on the front lines. We know Americans are dying in the war outside of International Legion fighters, which is not within the official purview of the United States military. We have completely caved out the innards of the Russian military for, relatively speaking, compared to the 2.3 trillion we spent in Afghanistan and the over almost 1 trillion that we spent in Iraq, a very small amount of money relative to the other wars that we've spent and how that didn't succeed and nearly as many military successes long term as we're probably going to see from a Ukrainian victory and what we've seen on the ground in fighting what was supposed to be the second most powerful military on the planet. And we are assisting them by sending them a lot of our old equipment and some of our equipment through weapons manufacturers that we're paying for. To amount, when it comes to the military aspects of aid, about 38 to 39, maybe 40, because they just approved another $1.2 billion worth of aid. We are assisting them. That is within the purview of the agreement we signed.
Yes, of the agreement. But previously you did say treaty.
The agreement. Can you please argue against the point?
Yeah. So we are holding up to our agreement. Cool. Now the fact that we are calling this aid actually does say that a good portion of this is not going to be paid back. Which how much debt do we actually know is going to be brought on the American people for supporting this? As far as I see it, as a proxy war, because we have had people politically painting Russia as an actual adversary of America. They haven't attacked America. I don't like Russia, but I can't say that we are legitimately fighting them head on. No, but we are basically propping up other people to fight. fight against them, that is a proxy war. That's what that is.
Okay,
If
so
you say that,
when people
if you're
say
saying
proxy
that puts
war,
it down.
when you say proxy war, when people say proxy war, the image they have in their head is that the United States is holding up another government to fight when it probably wouldn't want to otherwise, or wouldn't be fighting otherwise, and we are propping them up on our behalf. They're like our puppets. That's what it's talked about. That's why I feel like this term proxy war is unbelievably condescending, because the Ukrainians overwhelmingly want to fight back against the Russians, overwhelmingly want to push them out of their country. And so when I hear the word proxy war, it has this image of puppeteering Ukraine, when Ukraine would be fighting with or without us.
Yeah, but
I mean,
they wouldn't be fighting as long as they have.
We're sending aid to a country that's invaded.
They would be fighting as long as they have.
I don't know if that's. I don't know. They would probably still be fighting. I don't know if they would have had as many military success, but they would still be fighting.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't see them being even remotely as successful without Western aid.
Most of the aid we sent, didn't come into effect until after the Battle of Kiev, when the Russians were beaten back from the capital and they had to retreat. So maybe they would have gotten further than they've gotten now. Almost certainly, they probably would have. But the idea that the Ukrainians wouldn't still be fighting, I don't think that's true.
No, I don't think they'd be fighting with as much success as they have right now.
Okay.
If it wasn't for the use of the HIMARS equipment, the artillery that we've been sending over there, and look, one of the base that I work at, Dylan, is one of the major munitions hubs. I see the planes come in, and I can look at the itineraries. I know they're going to Ukraine. I see what they load on there. It was actually pretty interesting when they started bringing the artillery rounds through, because there's a artillery manufacturer here not too far away. And I was like, wow, dude, that is a lot. That is a lot of arty. And I went over to ops and looked at the manifest. And I went, oh, okay, well, that's not for us. Cool. All right. Well, Slava Ukraine, I guess. And it was kind of cool, because where I work is actually part of the logistics hub for the effort. But all at the same time, I'm just looking at how it has been framed in the media. The media points at it all as aid, which kind of implies that there's no repayment and things like that. Now the Lend-Lease,
I don't know. I don't think all of it is. Some of it's through the Lend-Lease program.
Yeah, the Lend-Lease program. I'm gonna have to look into that, because I'm woefully uninformed on that. I don't know a whole lot about it. But look, yeah, that's all I wanted to do, was just address it. I think the idea that Trump, what he wants to do now, if it will even be accepted by either side.
What Trump wants to do is abandon Ukraine. That's what he's setting the groundwork for. It's to abandon Ukraine from American support, because he's not going to be able to negotiate the deal that either he has in his mind, if he doesn't want to just give up Ukraine, you give up Ukrainian territory, like he's indicated in other interviews, like in the Sean Hannity piece.
Yeah, so I think
to me that's feckless cowardice in my mind.
I don't know if he would be capable of being able to broker such a negotiation. I would like to see a cessation of war. I think the statement, I'd like to see people stop dying. I think that was actually a good statement. I think it was poorly crafted.
It's extremely shallow.
Well, it is, but you link that video of the Russian soldier surrendering to the drone, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
That video is incredible.
Yeah.
That video is incredible.
Yeah. Look, any time that I can see warring factions not shoot each other, I think that's a good outcome.
What was his response? It was a response to a question about whether he supported Ukraine. So he said earlier during this war that Ukraine is being genocided. That's something he said in April, right at the start of the war. So that's before the vast majority of the war crimes were even done. So that was just at the start when we had Bucha and all these other things, the house-to-house quote-unquote cleansing operations in the Kiev Oblast. And a year later, after all the other war crimes have been committed, after all of this terrible stuff has been done, since then, he has tried to justify some of Russia's claims when it comes to, well, a lot of these people actually want to be part of Ukraine. He said that in the Sean Hannity interview, want to be part of Russia. He said that in the Sean Hannity interview as well. And now he's saying he doesn't really want Ukraine to win. He won't answer if he wants Ukraine to win. He avoided the question.
He's changing his rhetoric. This is the first time we've seen politicians do that. And let's be honest, Trump is now a politician. He's not the outsider that a lot of the MAGA
He
people
was the
want to try
former
to paint
president when he made the original
he's
statement.
an insider. He's an insider. He is a politician. So,
but the idea
politicians change their mind.
I gotta finish my point. The idea of, on one hand, acknowledging that a nation is being genocided, but then after acknowledging that the nation has been genocided, then going on to say you don't support that nation, that is fucking disgusting. That is gross. Because if I was to say something about like, oh, Poland's being genocided during World War II, in any other conflict, any other genocide that has occurred historically, and he used the word genocide, so I feel like the World War II example is on point if he's using words like genocide, whether I be talking about what's going on with the Rohingya Muslims or anywhere in the world where genocide's occurring, saying you don't support the people who are being genocided is gross, it's disgusting, and you're basically both sidesing it at that point. Both sidesing it with the genocider.
So he is trying to paint himself as a moderator. I don't know if he'll be able to accomplish that.
Why does the United States have to be that, by the way? I don't think America that's the best role we can serve in this conflict.
I agree. I think the best role we could play is none. Make America great first.
Do you agree with the statement at all, like never again after the Holocaust?
Yeah.
Unless it's expensive, right?
Well, I mean, never again is talking about the extermination of a race, of a group of people.
It was talking about genocide. It wasn't just I'm pretty sure national identity can be clearly included in this.
No, national identity is not a thing.
National identity is a thing. Yes.
No, it's not a protected class, is it?
Whether or not it's a protected class,
race.
if I was to go out and say I want to kill all of the Ukrainians, I'm going to go and I'm going to kill them all because they're Ukrainian. Would that be a call for genocide?
It could be. It could be considered that. It really depends on how people view that stuff, man.
Okay, so if he is saying it's genocide, that's his claim, and someone wants to live by the principle of never again, then the right thing to do is to stand with the people who he's claiming is being genocided.
What if he believes it's not a genocide?
But he said it was a genocide.
Maybe he's changed his mind. That's really the thing. I don't know if he has changed his mind. I don't talk to the guy.
Isn't that convenient?
But his rhetoric has changed.
Because it's only gotten worse since he's made that statement. So either when he made the statement, he had no clue what he was saying, he doesn't know what genocide is, and he was making uninformed statements on a war that he supposedly said he could have stopped while in office, or he's changed his mind, quote unquote, because he wants to, not be on the side that is against the Russians. He wants to just be away from the side that is being genocided because it's no longer as convenient to him.
I think at the beginning of the Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, I think his entire stance was this would have never happened if I was still president. Look at what a weakened, feckless president we have now. He was taking jabs. I don't think he even gave two shits about the Ukrainian people. Currently, I think he is looking more along the ways of he wants the war to end. Okay, cool. I think last night though, on Twitter, you did have one. Do
you think that the war wouldn't have happened if he was in office?
I 100% believe it wouldn't have happened if he was in office.
Why?
Because Trump is such an unpredictable individual with some of his international dealings that people were scared of what he would do. Supposedly, he told Putin, and I don't know if this is true. I don't even know if I believe it. But supposedly he told Putin that if he was to invade Ukraine, he would nuke Moscow. That is something that Trump has put out, being said that has not been confirmed. It could just be him puffing his chest out because he's Trump. That's what he does. But it is that kind of rhetoric. It's that unpredictability that I believe legitimately prevents people from acting too far out of line while he was president. I mean, Joe Biden is weak.
Is he? Well, I mean, like, Joe Biden actually is willing to stand up to the Russians. Trump wants to give them everything they want.
You see, we don't even know that because he didn't say that.
He did say that. He said it on Sean Hannity's program. He said it on Sean Hannity's program. He said he would want to give them territory. What do you think that translates to?
Yeah, giving away territory.
Like 5 months ago. Like 5 months ago.
Okay. And in 5 months, his opinion still could have changed. The amount of territory that he could say ceded.
I'm sorry. This is ridiculous. I can't hold Trump to account to anything he said because it's possible.
You can't hold anyone. No. Anyone can change their mind in a time frame. If you said it last night. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
If you said something last night, it'd be a different story.
Okay, AircraftSparky.
But
I believe
change your mind.
I believe every conservative should be locked up for being conservative.
Okay.
You can't critique me for that because I could have changed my mind in the last 5 seconds. You never know.
No, dude. I told you if you said it last night, that'd be a different thing. But if it's several months and your opinion changes, that can happen.
So you've never. Every time you critique somebody for saying something, do you say maybe they've changed their opinion in the last 72 hours? No, that'd be silly. And we have no indication that he would have changed his mind. In fact, from the way his rhetoric is going, I am more confident that he would give up territory because he's literally taking the more and more anti-aid to Ukraine position and saying he would end the war in 24 hours. And the only way he could do that from the Russian perspective is to say the Russians get to keep their land. The Ukrainians won't agree to it, though, of course.
Well, so I think if you were...
Is there any indication he's changed his mind? Any at all?
The only statements that we have had on Ukraine in the past several months has been the statements he gave last night. And it sounds like he is trying to do a more neutral stance. Now, if he's willing to give up Ukraine land, I don't think that's really his place to make that decision. That's kind of up to Zelensky. But
that's if he says by the way, that's part of the reason why that's part of the reason why he thinks that he could have stopped the war, because he believes he could have just offered Russia more land and then maybe they would have accepted it, and then therefore the war could have been avoided, which is something we all know Zelensky would have never said, okay, you can have the rest of Donetsk, you can have the rest of Luhansk. That was never going to happen.
I think actually we could just spitball. If Trump remained in office, if he did a second term, and Putin's like, "Hey, we want a land bridge access to Crimea," I think a viable compromise would have been that we'll allow you to have a connecting railway to Crimea. Period. No cessation of land, just open rails for logistical purposes to Crimea, without having to go over water.
But I think that comes from your view that this war is like centered around that, but this war isn't centered around, like, that's just like one small aspect of it. That doesn't deal with the issue of the Ukrainian government being against the Russian strategic interests. That doesn't deal with the issue of Donetsk. It doesn't deal with the issue of Luhansk. That doesn't deal with NATO membership. Doesn't deal with a million other issues that the Russians use to justify their invasion of Ukraine. What would happen is that concession would be made, and then you'd be like, okay, and then they would just invade maybe a year later if they accepted that concession at all.
Yeah, the NATO membership thing.
Also, didn't they already have? They already had railways into Crimea.
Yes, but they didn't have control over those railways.
Yes, they did.
And it's just no.
Over the Kerch Bridge, they had a railway directly into Crimea.
No. That's over water. That's not a land bridge.
Why does that not count?
Because it's too vulnerable from a strategic position. That is too vulnerable.
Wait. So a railway over that bridge is less vulnerable than a railway directly through Ukrainian territory?
Yes.
How? The Ukrainians
it's more vulnerable.
It'd be much easier for the Ukrainians to destroy the railway that is literally in their land that they control than the bridge that is not in their control.
Well, so right now they are probably building railway under the occupied lands in the Crimea because they intend to keep that land. It's
whether they can do that is another story.
whether they could do that, that's another story altogether. But I believe that was their initial intentions, and a lot of that has to stem back to also the pipeline issues going through Ukraine into Europe. There's a lot of things. The whole NATO membership, that was an agreement formed when the Soviet Empire fell, and America and NATO has gone against that by allowing Poland and all these other groups, other countries to join NATO. So Ukraine.
What did we go against?
Inevitability. We went against an agreement with the Soviet Union.
Which agreement was that?
The Russian Union, that we would not accept former Soviet states into NATO. There was
when did we agree to that
buffer zone? It was what, 99 when that was made. I'd have to look that up.
I think we had already accepted former Soviet states by 99.
Or it may have been earlier, 96, 97, right after the fall.
I mean, East Germany was a former Soviet state, and when they combined
East Germany, East Germany, when they unified with Germany, when they reunified, that's a different animal. That's not putting Belarus in NATO. That's not putting Poland in NATO. And Belarus isn't in NATO, but the Eastern Germany was Eastern Germany. It was never actually part of the USSR. So it was a separate country.
I want to move back to one last, because I got to go because it's very early and I haven't gotten any sleep, and I have to do demining in like 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
So you said that one of the things, or the major thing that seems to be the thing that would dissuade Putin from invading, would be what would Trump do? So I have no reason to believe that if Putin was to invade Ukraine, definitely, since Trump is now saying on the international stage and politically that we are the closest to nuclear war, and that's why we need to bring peace and all of this stuff. If he is that concerned about nuclear war right now, and we know his administration and his staff wouldn't have let him do it, he would not have nuked Moscow if Russia invaded Ukraine. And considering how much Trump bluffs, how much he pounds his chest, I think the Russians would make the calculation. Of course, Trump would actually not nuke us if we invaded Ukraine. The entirety of Russia's strategy was based on a quick victory. That's why their logistics fell through. That's why everything went awry so quickly, is because when they found the Ukrainians, could shoot back at them, they ran into a lot of road bumps. So, but their original plan was a quick victory, so quick that the West couldn't respond. And if it was quick, then the West wouldn't have been able to, because all the aid that has been like really game changing from the West has come in the later part of the war. The last 6 to 8 months of it has been when the larger scale amount of aids, when it comes to the M777 howitzers and all the shells, all that stuff, that came later. And so if they're still betting on a quick victory under a Trump or a Biden administration, that strategy wouldn't have changed. Then they wouldn't even need to worry about Trump's response, because they think they're going to win quickly, unless Trump had some other leverage that I don't know about that could have dissuaded them from invading.
And what was it, last night? Trump even said that they both have secrets that they don't want out and stuff like that. I don't know if that's him saying, "Hey, I would release something." Some information on either to make them look bad, to bring them to the negotiating table, or anything stupid like that.
That's just speculation.
Yeah. I don't know that, but it did sound like a threat to both of the leaders. Look, as far as it's really all concerned, it doesn't really matter, because until 2025, when we have the actual winner of the election inaugurated, be it Biden or some other Democratic candidate, or be it Trump or some other Republican candidate who wins, it really doesn't matter. It's all speculation. But I will tell you one thing: you did have a major win last night on Twitter, at least as far as I see it. Your tweet last night saying there is no man on earth who thinks more in terms of winning and losing than Donald Trump.
Yeah, when he said that, I don't think of terms of winning and losing, I'm like, bullshit, get out of here.
That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard come out of Trump's mouth, because he has said on many times, we'll be winning so much, you'll be tired of winning. No, all of his speeches from 2016 through his presidency was actually framed in the terms of winning and losing. That was your best analysis of the night that I felt, and it was based. I just think you were just a little off because of the what he was projecting as his intention, and you're like, oh, this is cowardly.
I think dodging the questions was cowardly. I think him, changing with the wind was cowardly when it comes to the word of genocide. I think if you believe a genocide's going on, not standing with the people being genocide is cowardly. And I also believe fundamentally just the position that he wants to move America into after we've signed this agreement is also cowardly. I believe every level of his position is cowardly.
I hear you. So I look at it as my point of view is I think that the invasion that Russia did on Ukraine is wrong. It shouldn't happen. I would like Russia to just leave. But I know what reality is. War fucking sucks. Those who want to continue want this fight to continue on, I suggest you go participate in it one way or another. Dylan is doing that. He is living his values. You should support him on that. Make sure to donate to this man. Twitch is fucking asshole because CNN is asshole for actually causing that, because I guarantee
Warner Bros. Apparently.
Yeah, they can all eat a whole bag of dicks, and not in a fun way, in a definitely homophobic way. Eat all the dicks.
In a homophobic way.
Yes, because that's bad, right? Because they'd be homophobes. You'd be like, oh, well, eat a bag of dicks wouldn't be good. Yes, I want you to suffer. Free Dylan Burns.
But if the insult is eat a bag of dicks, then what, in a homophobic way, wouldn't the person be telling them to eat a bag of dicks be the homophobic one, because they're the ones implying that eating a bag of dicks is bad?
Well, so it'd be more along the lines of implying the person eating said bag of dicks is a homophobe, and eating a bag of dicks would be gay. Therefore, that would make them gay, and that would make them bad in their mind. It's more about the internal. Or you just accidentally
called yourself a homophobe.
Whatever. I don't care. Look, I don't care if people are gay. Live your fucking life. It's not my problem. If it doesn't affect me, it doesn't bother me. So that's a true based liberal stance as far as sexuality. But no, man, you're doing good work. I'm proud of you. You're doing well. Keep it up. I look forward to seeing more stuff from Ukraine. I want to see some of that live footage, man. It's good stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I should be releasing some of the stuff soon. I got a bunch of pieces in the work. I got an interview with somebody who's been fighting Wagner and Bakhmut.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really good interview. I've got a piece where I was embedded with a priest who leads a battalion of like 80 people. Really interesting guy. And of course, I've got all this footage from the minefields. I've got a big piece I'm working on from the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I went there, I filmed there. And so I wanted to show some of the footage I got there and a lot of my beliefs about how Russian propaganda operates in the United States, how they fund Russian propaganda, and how people become, subservient to it, how people fall into these rabbit holes. I got a lot of stuff in the works.
So I need to ask, besides actively being shelled, because being actively shelled is fucking terrifying. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, don't want to repeat it. With working with these IED groups, what has been the most nerve-wracking thing that you have witnessed firsthand and or experienced?
So besides the minefields and besides the getting shelled?
Well, the shelling. See, I think shelling is a little bit more nerve-wracking than the minefield, because at least with a minefield, you have some control in detection if you know how to, with the bayonets and probing for finding. But I think that's a little less nerve-wracking, but still nerve-wracking as hell. Would a minefield be more nerve-wracking?
Getting chased by a Russian drone was the worst. That was the worst feeling in the world.
Dude, and the use of civilian drones being modified to deliver
we thought it was a suicide drone. That's what made it even worse.
Yeah. Because dude, those things are fucking terrifying, man.
There's nothing where do you run? It's like
when I was deploying and doing that stuff, we had drones, but we didn't have drones to the amount that's being used now in the Ukrainian theater. And no, I didn't even think about that, Dylan. That's an awesome point.
That was my first video ever released on the ground here. Was getting chased by a Russian drone.
So you sleeping all right and everything else, though?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Don't worry about it.
All right, man. Well, look, got to do a buddy check. Look, man, you stay safe. Thanks for the conversation. YouTube audience, man, y'all start screaming. Y'all start screaming at Amazon. Fuck those guys. He needs to get back on Twitch. That's where a lot of his following comes from. And look, that one of the guys that actually make Twitch Paul good.
Thanks, man. Well, you have a good one. Okay, I gotta go sleep. I gotta go sleep.
Take care, brother.
Take care. See you later. Bye bye.